The concept of a museum is the fruit of a system of relations. First of all, the relation with its director, meaning the chosen museum formula, the museographic intentions. Next comes the character of the relation between the museum and its works of art and its guest artists. Then comes the relation between the museum and its own architecture, with its container. And finally, we have the relation between the museum and people. We could think of a popular museum for large numbers of people, or of a museum without a public, perhaps on a remote mountain. I regard contemporary visual art as a great source of spirituality for man today. In a world characterized by violence and aggressiveness, art is a fundamental element of thought, meditation and criticism, and of cultural, social and anthropological self-criticism. As mankind heads towards the 21st century, it takes stimuli from the dialectics of three characteristics. It is at once mystical, spatial, and then natural. The mystical attitude is due to the reappearance of the mystery of the cosmos that is leading it towards a fresh need for religion. Its spatial attitude is due to our gradual and increasingly impelling artificiality, which makes all of us into kinds of robots, connected to a multitude of information machines. In a way, we are already experiencing science fiction. Then the natural attitude, that is, our rediscovery of the world of nature as a source of elementary survival and spiritual wealth. I know that artistic goods and the art system are the same as the systems of other merchandise. The museum must be above this level of economic mechanism. The themes of a museum are poetry and spirituality, but its survival is linked to the invention of an economic formula. Perhaps a museum might sell its works, just as a department store might base a cultural philology on its own goods. An ideal museum of the contemporary visual imaginary world must interweave all the visual disciplines, from art to architecture and design, to handicrafts and fashion, materials and trades. Because its objects are not interesting in isolation, but when they are multiplied by the complexity of their relations and combinations. The objects of the near future could be of very many kinds. They could be handmade, mass-produced, made of recyclable materials. They could be of all kinds. The important thing is, their common denominator should involve an attempt at beauty, an attempt at a world of harmony. An ideal museum also brings different ideologies and cultural geographies into a dialectic situation. This is not a synthesis of the arts. It is the idea of a three-dimensional encyclopedia, of an organized assemblage of all the visual components that make up the world as we see it. The architecture of museums today is the noble landmark. In the 70s, it was a rhetorical machine for exhibiting art in a courtly way, and in the 80s, a place of hedonistic theatricalization. On the threshold of the 21st century, it can be envisaged as a cathedral of poetic energy, itself a work of art among the other works on view, a visual story accompanying the visitor's imagination. One may also ask, is the existence of a museum really relevant to the times? Could it not be substituted, for example, by large-scale archives capable of supplying works to big buildings allocated only to theme and temporary exhibitions? It would be a dynamic, active and economical way of showing art, the opposite to the generally static concept of the museum. The museum must be institutional but not paternalistic. It must be as friendly and welcoming as a private home. Visitors should be able to slacken the pace of their thoughts and bodies as if entering a church, to assume a sense of spiritual rituality through contact with works of art. The house is a protective structure for people of any time and place. And first of all, it's a bit like a mother.
È un po' come la madre.
I remember writing once that houses have sticky floors like honey, where your feet get stuck and you can't get out. This means that it is in effect something of a closure, more a point of arrival than of departure, that tends to make people in them static, besides protecting them. There are, in fact, positives and negatives in a house. For example, an individual's greatest freedom is exercised in the anarchy of his own home when he goes in and shuts the door behind him. However, in closing the door, in a sense, he also puts himself into a prison. To be popular, museum architecture needs to have a labyrinthine character. It must stimulate first the emotions and then the instincts of its public, and only subsequently show itself to be didactic and academic. It's a bit like entering into a state of prayer and thought, to acquire knowledge, to find out. I've done a large number of projects in which I've involved numerous people of all cultures and geographical areas. In doing so, my attitude has been a bit like that of conducting an orchestra. It also bears a similarity to the methods of synthetic music, when diverse instruments, sounds, rhythms and genres are assembled. The result is open and kaleidoscopic. The end result is kept in suspense, to a certain extent unforeseeable, until the moment of completion. In this way, as an architect, I renounce possession of the ultimate synthesis of my project. The whole building develops around a tower, regarded as the emblem of the museum. With its image of gold, it contains the storerooms, which are the museum's treasure. Then there is a principal axis for town planning reasons, since the canal had to be transparent all the way across.
Richiedeva una trasparenza da una parte all'altra della sponda, l'edificio è stato diviso.
The building was divided into 3 main sectors, also corresponding to the different departments of the museum that can be isolated as pavilions. So, situated in this zone, is the Archaeology and History Department, the design of which was entrusted to Michele De Lucchi. Above it is the zone designed by Stark for ceramics and applied art. And then, a system of slabs set below the water level contains a series of services, such as the auditorium, the library, the prince room, and so on. The piazza is a circular hall, also located in this zone. So there are 2 piazzas with 2 museum rooms beneath. Among the many different types of architecture, the square is one of the most fascinating and typically European, particularly Italian expression. The piazza living room, large or small, is a social meeting place, a concave space which repeats externally what the living room in a house is. The great squares, St. Mark's or St. Peter's, are luxurious places. And so also, and perhaps more so, are the smaller, more secluded piazze, such as that of Siena or that of Vigevano, which is one of the most beautiful in Italy. Located on 2 stories in this zone is the Department of Temporary and Contemporary Art Exhibitions. Created above it by another group called Himmelblau is the Classical Art Gallery.
Un ponte attraversa
A bridge crosses the building completely and can be used by cyclists. And in this part, a drawbridge leads from the station square to the city centre.